For showing up. I'm probably going to, I mentioned to Mary a few minutes ago that I'm probably going to, as I begin sharing my screen here, I'm probably going to switch off my video. I find it a little bit distracting to be looking at myself presenting. Just so you all know, I'll probably be doing that in a minute or so here, but I'm going to begin sharing my screen here. All right, give me 1 second. Stop that. Share screen. And here we go. Okay, so officially, hello everybody. I do have a lot to share, and the allotted time is going to go fast, but I wanted to take a moment to thank our Open Ed organizers for their heroic efforts this year. This is a community-driven conference, and it's a remarkable achievement. The organizers really hit a home run with this year, and I very much appreciate it, and I congratulate them. Thanks also to you attendees for the opportunity to share a little bit about my experience here at the University of Buffalo. And it's important to note that this presentation is developed under a Creative Commons license, CC BY. And that is our official housekeeping information. As you know from my abstract, this is a case study on using OER-enabled pedagogy to engage library and information students, and it's going to proceed like this. I'm going to provide some operational definitions so we have a common language to work with. I'll give a brief description of the open pedagogical experiment that is the course and the assignment in which all the action took place. I'll introduce the study and share what I deem to be the key results, discuss some implications, provide some concluding thoughts, and then of course, field your comments and your questions. So we need to begin with some standard definitions. And given this particular venue, the Open Education Conference, in our limited time, I need to assume that attendees have some understanding of these concepts. But for the record, OERs are any teaching, learning, or research materials in any format that reside in the public domain and are made available under an intellectual property license permitting free use or repurposing in educational settings, right? That's our baseline information to work with. As you know, the open part of OERs is really the key, and that openness, backing up here for a second, is really characterized by what we refer to as the 5 rights, right? Or the 5 R's that instructors have when using OERs to teach their courses. These are the rights to retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute course content as they see fit. Now, the definitions vary for the term open pedagogy, which is an open pedagogical practice. Open pedagogy is generally understood as the theory and the practice of engaging students as creators of course content rather than requiring them to be just passive consumers of it. Proponents of this framework view it as a form of experiential learning in which students demonstrate greater understanding of and engagement with course content through the act of creating it. So, bringing these elements together, our good friends Mr. Wiley and Mr. Hilton proposed OER-enabled pedagogy as a set of teaching and learning practices that are only possible or practical in the context of the 5R permissions that are characteristic of OERs. And that is the operational definition that is embraced with this case study. So, some contextual information. In 2019, I created a new course on international and comparative librarianship for the University at Buffalo's Department of Information Science. The course was online and asynchronously delivered for 26 master's level students. Like many open ed attendees, I dislike the notion of having students purchase textbooks when all the information they need to be successful is already available in the library or is openly available elsewhere. However, the initial stages of development for this course were really stymied by what I deemed to be the substandard quality of supporting literature on international librarianship. And as you can see here on this slide, my general assessment is reinforced by Mr. Lohr. And perhaps unsurprisingly, there were no relevant OER texts at that time for me to adopt for the course. And so I viewed this as an opportunity to adopt an open pedagogical framework. And accordingly, students in this course were assigned to create their own textbook. Each student authored a chapter about libraries in the field of librarianship in a non-North American country. The textbook was developed under a Creative Commons license as an OER, allowing free use in future sections of the course or in similar courses offered in LIS programs at other institutions. And the completed volume was published on the University of Buffalo's institutional repository. Now, as noted, and I'm going to emphasize this over and over again, this was an experiment. And I emphasized that with students. They were willing and enthusiastic participants. And as a result, I also viewed this as an opportunity to investigate their perceptions of this undertaking. And I imagined the following: that moving beyond the traditional one and done term paper would resonate with students, that they would appreciate the opportunity to contribute to professional discourse by addressing gaps in the literature, that they would benefit by coming out of the course with a publication for their portfolios and their dossiers, that developing an OER would resonate in particular with these students, given LIS ethos and the library's abiding principle of free to all. And finally, that students would support this manner of experimentation in the context of a research university, which was undertaken to improve teaching and learning. So my study explored these hypotheses, and tangentially, these additional questions that you see here proposed by Mr. Wiley and Mr. Hilton about student perceptions of creating their own course content as OERs. So to understand students' perceptions of this open pedagogical experiment, I collected anonymized data by way of a voluntary survey and a required reflection paper assignment. The latter of these was required because, as noted by Ms. Hegarty, reflection is a key component of open pedagogical practice. Now, given our time constraints, I'm going to report what I deem to be the key results from this study. And I'll share the survey results and complement them with corresponding excerpts from student reflections. For the sake of efficiency, I recommend that attendees listen to my reported survey results and read the student reflections. And starting from the top, all survey respondents reported that this experiment, creating their own course textbook, was their first experience with an open pedagogical framework, as exemplified by this reflection from student P. 60% of respondents indicated that making their coursework openly available was somewhat unnerving, but most came to accept and even embrace that notion, as exemplified by this reflection from student W. All respondents recognized the educational value of adopting an open pedagogical framework for this course, as exemplified by this reflection from student G. All respondents supported the idea of using this framework to teach future sections of this course, as exemplified by this reflection from student B. All respondents embraced the notion of moving beyond the traditional one-and-done term paper and giving life to their coursework moving forward as an OER. Students were profusely emphatic on this point, as exemplified by this reflection from student R. All respondents reported that they benefited from receiving peer feedback on their textbook chapters. Peer feedback is another key component of open pedagogical practice, and student N provided some generous reflection on that particular aspect. All respondents reported the appeal of publishing as a product of this course, as exemplified by these reflections from students L and N. All respondents indicated their support for making their work available under a Creative Commons license, as exemplified by this reflection from student E. Okay, so those were the key results. Logic holds that the views of students who participated in the study were affected by levels of engagement with me and with course subject materials. So despite anonymous data collection and voluntary participation in the survey, the fact that data was collected through a courseware platform suggests, at least to me, the likelihood of selection bias. It is also noteworthy that this is a highly contextualized investigation involving 26 graduate level LIS students in an asynchronously delivered online course. So the results, therefore, are not generalizable. And there are other factors to keep in mind. Once again, this was an experiment. The focus was on students' perceptions. And importantly, there were no controls in place to measure student learning, which is, I think, where we need to be as we continue research in this area. I think Mr. Hilton would agree with that. All that being said, the results of this investigation appear to me to give credence to my original hypotheses on the use of open pedagogy in this international and comparative librarianship course. The evidence is fairly compelling that students in this study ascribed a positive learning experience to the implementation of an open pedagogical framework, and they held for its continued use in future sections of the course. Students were enthusiastic in their embrace of creating renewable versus disposable coursework. They also expressed satisfaction with contributing to the professional literature, building the discipline's nascent OER record, and having a publication to feature in their curricular and professional dossiers. In terms of lessons learned, many students commented about the scale of the open textbook creation project in the context of a compressed 6-week summer term. Some found the ambitious time frame motivating, but most, to be honest, found it to be very intense. This next item really stuck with me. Some students reported levels of discomfort with writing chapters about other countries and cultures as outsiders. And I regard this particular point as something of a blind spot in my own course planning. So a few concluding business items here. The completed volume, titled International Libraries and Open Textbook, was published on the University of Buffalo's institutional repository. More details about this study are included in this paper, which was recently published in the Journal of Librarianship and Scholarly Communication. The research data is available on the Open Science Framework website. Both of the slides and the notes for this presentation are also available on the Open Science Framework website. This is the research that I cited in this presentation. And I thank you very much for your attention and for this opportunity. And I look forward to any comments or questions. So I'm going to stop sharing.